What's up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live in a living color from the Radio What Studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Famous? It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do I always send you? DJLittleRock.com. One more time, DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote, and maybe you could have me at your next event. You know I like to party with the people. The people need to be entertained. Let me entertain you. Are you not entertained? Make your next thing a big one. Speaking of entertainment, today on the program, The Enemy. Who's The Enemy? Well, you're going to find out in the next few minutes. So stick around. This week's shows, I have no public shows. So I have no shows. The two places, well, it's Thanksgiving week, so happy Thanksgiving. And it's also Friday night at the Rab. Black Friday, they're staying closed. So look at the Rab's Facebook page for more information. I think they're closed for a certain reason. Anyway, I'm not going to put their laundry on this podcast. It's time to get into it with The Enemy. And I got him on Skype. So if you're listening to the audio version of this, I encourage you to check out the video version on my YouTube page, youtube.com/user/Keys Dan, or just look up Keys Dan. Yeah, I know you'll see 3 different YouTube pages. It's the one that has the Radio What logo. So there you go. All right, let's get into it with The Enemy. Skyping The Enemy now. And there he is, The Enemy.
You go. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, for sure, man.
Okay, perfect.
You sound great. Sure. You look great.
Thank you, man.
Good to have you on the podcast, almost face-to-face, using this great technology.
Yeah,
Keys Dan here.
Yep, thank you for having me, by the way.
Is it The Enemy?
Yes.
Why The Enemy?
Coming from, if you don't know, for those that don't know listening, I from Toronto originally, so Canada. And in Toronto, actually, it's a little tricky. It was a little tricky to kind of break in to the music industry just because crossing the border and different things like that. And like locally, it's very difficult in terms of, because we never had that, I guess you could say that mass appeal or that commercial scene and different things like that. So for me, it was a little tricky in the beginning, and I felt a little bit of resistance from a lot of the local places, I guess you could say, like, the local scene. So I kind of went with that name, and I was like, it's a cool name to kind of throw it back in people's faces, but also kind of, for me, it also signifies being different, like, just being unorthodox and things like that.
Oh, yeah. Branding is definitely a thing that you have to do to get yourself known. And The Enemy is just as good as a brand as any. And the way that you spelled it is kind of cool with the D''NME. Getting that definitely right out of the way. I know if you Google that, you pretty much come up, man. Your official website comes up, your Twitter, your Facebook, your Instagram. But give the people an idea of who you are. Well, I know you're from Toronto, Canada. And what's it like being a rapper in Toronto, Canada, and being you?
Well, honestly, to be honest with you, one thing is I learned to enjoy the process of it, even though in the earlier stages it was a little bit tricky to like navigate and things like that. I think as I grew musically and lyrically and all those things like that, I kind of started to appreciate different things of like how the process is and all that type of stuff, right? So I think for me, I just think differently when it comes to that type of stuff. Like although I still would have a chip on my shoulder, I never let it hinder me, so to speak, So like I didn't let those things, like those obstacles and different things hinder me. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna use this to my advantage and things like that. But growing up in Toronto, to be honest with you, it's really I would say it's always, again, good experience, great upbringing and different things like that. It's just when I got into music, I start to see things a little bit differently, because it's just the music industry on the whole, whether in the States, whether in Europe, whether in Canada, it's just a tricky thing. I don't like to say difficult because I don't like to be negative or whatnot, but I feel like it's very tricky to navigate in no matter where you're from, right? So for me, starting in Toronto, I used to not understand that whole part of the lack of support and different things in that nature. So, for me, it was tough to get used to that, and then getting accustomed to how things work. And then when I started to travel to the States and different things, it's a little bit different because you're not from there, so you get a kind of different respect, so to speak.
Man, already just talking to you and just meeting you for the first time and just getting to know you a little bit, you already have the gift of gab. So that is like the beginning of rap, knowing how to put words together, becoming a sort of a wordsmith. When did you know that you
Yes.
had that skill? Was that something that you were coming up in grade school? Did you read a lot when you were a kid? Did you learn words? How was it growing up?
So
You're from Toronto, right? Born and raised?
yeah, yeah, for
Okay.
sure. Hold on, I'm getting some feedback. I wonder if the headphones will work. Hold on, two
Yeah.
seconds. Let's see, how's this sound?
Yeah, it sounds great. And plus,
Okay,
if you just
cool.
center yourself up on the camera, we'll get a little
Yeah.
video on this as well. If people are just listening to the audio version, they can slip on
Yeah.
over to the YouTube and check out the video version.
Okay, cool.
And
Sweet.
and
How's
you
that?
and see your wonderful face right there next to me. See, as I'm pointing at you on my broadcast software.
Nice.
So,
That's
all right. So, growing up Toronto, man, and when did you
Yeah.
know you had the gift of gab? How did that formulate? How did that come about?
I think I've always liked conversation. Even as a kid, I spoke a lot, talked a lot. So for me, I didn't know poetically I had anything like that. When I started to make music, like start to rap, actually, I didn't think it was good in the beginning. Like I enjoyed it. I loved the music of it, the culture and everything. But starting out, as I'm sure everybody does, like it wasn't good. Like it just didn't sound seasoned. But I had just started, right? But I always was good at English and different things like that. So words have never been an issue for me. When I started to write rhymes and different things and kind of develop a little bit, I started to learn how to connect words, so syllables and different things like that. Because in terms of rap, anybody can rhyme cat, hat, bat, and things like that, But when you start saying syllables and typical and reciprocal, and you start putting these like words together and like aligning them with other phrases, when you start doing things like that, you start to get more advanced. So once I start to get the key to that and start to see that, obviously my writing and my rhyming capability expanded. So for me, I guess being good at English I think helps, but I think being a natural conversationalist helps as well, because I'm just able to speak freely and different things like that. So it never really, some people that are, I guess you could say, more socially awkward, they may have trouble doing it. But again, some people still express themselves well, even if they're socially awkward, through art. But for me, it was just a natural thing, I guess, in terms of vocals, in terms of speaking and whatnot.
Well, the enemy, growing up in the '80s and in the early days of rap, when Crush Groove, the Fat
Yes.
Boys, Curtis Blow, and Run DMC, it always seemed to me that it was pretty basic. It was pretty simple. I'm the best from the east to the west. I got the big mouth from the north to the south. It was very simple, and it seems like rap has really been challenging itself lately, getting more and more intricate. As you were saying, it's not just the cat, bat, hat. It's getting words that may not rhyme, but you twist them with your mouth and get them to rhyme. Who were the people that you were growing up with? I mean, I'm a much older man than you, and I'm guessing that who were your influences? Who's the people that you were growing up with and you were trying to emulate as you first started? My favorite rapper, for example, is Heavy D, and I know,
Nice.
he to me. He is the epitome of rap. Somebody for me, and just the wonder of Heavy D. But who's the guys that had you going when you were a kid?
For me, I would say a lot of lyricists. So Tupac, even though his stuff was a little bit more, people say basic, I still think he put a lot of thought and he put a lot of syllables and different things in his rhymes. Jay-Z, Eminem, I would say Royce the 5'9". There's a lot of underground guys too. So also, I would say Nas is another one. Nas was like really big, and guys like that. That I even went back, right? Like I would look at what guys like Jay-Z looked into, and I would go back. So I went to Big Daddy Kane. I really liked his stuff. I liked Coogee Rap. Cannabis was another one. So what I did was, I looked at these guys and I kind of would write in the beginning stages, I'd write down their rhymes and just study it, almost like a scientist in a sense. So I would see where certain words landed. And if you, in music terms or whatnot, when you have the snare, which is like on the 4 count, so it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is the snare. when you go to that, usually the rhymes would land on there in a basic rhyme. But with these guys, it was all throughout the one and the two, and it was going all in the different places of music. And I looked at that and I was like, okay, that's really interesting because they're not only rhyming the end of the line, they're doing internal rhymes. I think Rakim was probably the first guy to do that. From my understanding and like research, he did internal rhymes, and he said he likened it to a saxophone player. So that was his style. So I went back and dabbled around in different things just to see where certain things came from.
Oh, Eric B. and Rakim, they were a great team for sure.
Absolutely.
My goodness, I still play them at parties whenever I'm DJing, and they give me free range, and I go, you know what? I'm going old school hip hop. I'm going old school rap, and I'll put on This Is a Journey into Sound, and it was oh my goodness. As soon as that comes up, a certain level of person that's out there in the crowd recognizes that do 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 doom, and then that bass just starts rocking through the speakers, and that just gets the booties on the dance floor. Man, that's basic old school, and really all those beats were stolen from previous. We're always building on the shoulders of giants. Those beats were stolen from the 60s and the 70s.
Absolutely.
And turned into 80s and 90s. So all right, let's get into that. Who's making your beats? Are you doing it all yourself, or do you have people, a team?
So I have a team. I have one go-to guy. His name's John Bonus. Special shout out to John Bonus. He's actually originally from Atlanta. I think he's back in Atlanta right now, but he was residing in Colorado for a couple of years. I hooked up with him through a singer that I wanted to work with by the name of Adam Duncan. We did a couple songs together, and once getting with John, it was really good because that's one thing I was in need of early in my career, but I didn't know who to go to for that in terms, because people think, oh, you just go to a producer. But the truth is, when you're making music, I think someone has to get to know you and get to know what you want to do and kind of help mold that while adding things as well. So for me, wanting to be just a great rapper, I wanted to be lyrical, I wanted to just rap, right? He taught me how to, okay, you know what? That's all fine and dandy, but you got to dumb it down for certain songs. If you have to simplify certain things, you can still keep your lyrical integrity, but there's certain records you can't just do that with every song. So he taught me how to structure those type of things. And then when we would work in the studio, we would start with a conversation. That was really different because a lot of producers I had come in contact with, they would just give you a beat. They'd be like, oh, hey, here's some beats. And the thing is, they didn't make that with you in mind, if that makes sense. Like they made it just to either put it out there, or they just made it whatever came to them. But when I work with John, we sit down, we have a conversation of where I'm at, whether it be life, just what I want to do. And then we kind of start going in that direction, So every record is different, but it starts with the conversation. I really like that aspect of it rather than just, hey, here's a beat, rap on it. And, it's just not really a lot of thought. I mean, that can happen too, because I do have other producers where I've done that with, but I just like the idea of the structure with John.
Yeah, I do have a stack of karaoke beats, and every once in a while, a freestyle rap explosion, just a battle comes, it just comes to a fruition in the middle of a party. Hey, you got any beats? Yeah, I got some beats. Let me throw something on there for you. And a freestyle rap party just comes out. I throw a microphone to one guy and another microphone to another guy. But it's good to have a team that builds and builds and and makes a relationship. Because I know you can't do it all yourself. You could try to do it all yourself. I know a lot of rappers that are SoundCloud rappers, and that's, man, that's become a polarizing thing to say, oh, I'm a SoundCloud rapper. That means that you're in your bedroom, you got your Fruity Loops or your FL, I guess FL Studio is what it's called now. You make your own beats, you rap over your own beats into a good quality microphone. You can do it all yourself, but it's nice to have a producer. And I'm glad you're giving credit where credit is due. I love giving shout outs to people, man. And you said that you were influenced by some of the more obscure underground. Hey, maybe you'll turn some of my listeners on to something new. What are those obscure underground guys, if you can remember any of them?
Some of them, to be honest with you, some of them did get some sort of notoriety, but they weren't, they weren't commercialized, if that makes sense. So like Royce the 5'9" is an example. He was really close to Eminem in the early stages, and he kind of segued and did his own thing or whatnot. And guys even like Talib Kweli, right? They're known, but they're really respected on what you would consider the underground, like even to this day, when you see a lot of these guys now, you look at it and you're like, wow, they still have bodies of work that kind of go under the radar. Funny enough, Royce the 5'9", he actually is nominated for a Grammy. I believe in 2021, which is his first ever nomination. And he's probably like 12, 13, 15 albums in already, right? So like the idea that what he just stuck to what he was doing, and that still got him a level of notoriety, you know? So guys like that were really good. There's a lot of guys in Canada, like one guy from Toronto, JD Era, he's really good. I've always thought he was really good coming from Toronto, and I think he was probably doing it way before I even started rapping. You know, he was like in the scene or whatnot, and he just has a consistent body of work in different things. You know, but like I said, going back to the whole navigating, I think it's hard for a lot of rappers from here to kind of leave and expand, so to speak, because again, sometimes in other regions they don't really accept you, so to speak, right? So even if you have so much skill, it's very difficult for people to navigate. But in terms of underground, those would be some of the guys that, you know, influenced me and that I respect.
Man, I did talk to one guy up there, and I want to give a shout out to Outlaw Radio. And this guy, yes. Have you met up with him? He's up there in Canada.
I don't think I've heard of him. Maybe if you showed me a picture, or like Outlaw Radio, or is his name Outlaw?
Yeah, oh my goodness. I can't remember what his name is, but he has a little radio station, Outlaw Radio, and he really supports a lot of the new rappers and new hip hop guys. I'd love to put you together with him, as he does do a lot of interviews with rappers that are up and coming. But you know, let's go back to you know, you said you were in school and you liked English. Did you find yourself getting rhyming handbooks, or were you talking to the ladies? Did you find that you had the gift of gab that made a certain kind of person just it was responsive to people? You know, when you were in the hallways, were you rapping at that time? I'm just imagining a young DNME just you know, doing it, you know, by himself, or maybe with a group of kids. Who was your crew growing up in Toronto?
So for me, going back to school or whatnot, I don't think I had the gift of the gab with the ladies personally. That came like later, like, you know, later in life. I learned more conversational type skills. But usually what would happen in high school was there were ciphers and different things, right? So this was a time where freestyling, like off the top freestyling or whatnot, was a thing. Like you probably go into a circle, 30 seconds, you say a piece, other guy says a piece, and it kind of goes around or whatnot. And that was the first time, I believe, in high school was where I saw rappers actually in front of me, people who could do it in front of me, which let me know, I was like, wow, this is actually cool, and this is something that's attainable in as far as skill goes, you know, because there were some really good guys that just were freestyling, you know, and just doing it on lunch breaks or whatever the case may be. So for that, like, that was like my initial like wow moment, so to speak, right? Like I was already listening to hip hop, obviously, but just seeing somebody do it is very different from you seeing it on TV and it's manufactured. And again, as a 16-year-old kid, you don't know the difference. You're just like, oh, this happens out there. But then when you see somebody doing it in front of you, I was able to reach out to those people and ask them, like, how do you do this? And how do you put this together? And then later on, after leaving high school or whatnot, I started to really delve into DVDs and documentaries about hip hop, whether it be the business, the skills, or whatever the case may be. I would really like absorb all of that, you know? So one thing I learned was there's a rapper, I'm not sure if you heard of him, by the name of MC Supernatural. So he's like considered the greatest, probably freestyle, off the top freestyle MC of all time, because he just does improvised rhymes. Like I don't even know if he bothers writing anything, because he just goes off the top, and he'll pick things out of a hat in the crowd when he does shows and stuff. So I was watching this documentary called Freestyle. It showcased him, and there's another guy, MC Juice, who was really good. And I would just see that he used a rhyming dictionary to expand his vocabulary. So I got that later. And one thing I noticed, because rap is very mental, you know, so I would read the rhyming dictionary, but a lot of my brain started getting attached to having perfect rhymes, you know, so I wanted to step away from that. And like, so what I would do is write a rhyme down and try, as you said earlier, bend the words and like focus on the vowel and different things like that. So that helped me develop even more. So I did look at I wouldn't use the rhyming dictionary if I was writing something, you know, but I would just read through it or whatever. The dictionary was another one, just a regular dictionary to expand my vocabulary and whatnot. But I would notice as I did that, I just started to develop. But what helped me develop even more was just getting in the habit of writing and freestyling like every day, just doing that and being very discipline with the whole craft, you know, because there's a lot of guys I believe that, you know, they write and they write when they need to, or they do it a couple times, but doing it like disciplining every day and sitting down and saying, look, I'm going to write this, whether it be 4 lines, 8 lines, or whatever the case may be, just something where you're developing the habit. That was like another gem I got from John, the producer, because he was like, you just got to get into the habit. Because when he produces, he does it every day, you know, whether it comes out or not. It's just getting your practice in.
It sounds like John's a good dude to have in your corner, because it's just like any other job. It's work, man. You got to work at it. And the writing part, putting it down on paper, is going to help you remember it better. A lot of people are like that. Some people have photographic memories to where they could look at one thing and just remember it forever and ever. Man, I don't have that memory. I got to write it down. I got to read it over and over. I got to underline it. I got to underscore it. I got to write it again and make sure that I remember it. That's how I used to get through my tests, you know, when I was doing different classes, and that's how a lot of people get through their tests. So yeah, just like any other job, you got to work and you got to write. So who's cultivating this interest? When you said, hey, Mom, Dad, I want to be a rapper, what did they say? And brothers and sisters, or those people that you saw in the cafeteria, were you able to go up to them and say, hey, teach me what you do? How do I do that?
So in the beginning stages, like so my dad, when I was younger, he passed away. So he wasn't around. He didn't get to the point of like seeing that. But my mom, she was, she at first she didn't understand it because she doesn't come like culturally. My mom's from Trinidad, right? So she didn't come from that, like, you know, come from understanding like music and different things in terms of like getting into it, right? For her, she's like, you want to do music? Like it takes like she more not, she wasn't dismissive by any means, but she just didn't understand it the way I was looking at it, like in the future for me, right? I just looked at it. I was like, I want to do this, and I'm doing this. You know, like figure it out as you go, but I'm doing this. Now, moving into school, I don't think like the friends around me. I didn't have friends around me in terms of that were in my like group or whatever that were really interested in actually pursuing rap. They would listen to it or whatnot, but the other kids in school that would do it, I think it was a pastime thing for fun. Me, I knew like even at 16, I was like, I want to do this. Now, when I would go up to them, one guy was really good. We're still like friends. I haven't seen him in a couple of years, but he really helped me out in terms of the freestyling and just the development, because he was actually making songs. Like he was going to a studio with his friends and he was making records and doing different things really raw at the time. But he was probably the best in that group, in that circle. So I would just pick his brain all the time and ask him, how do you go about this? How do you do this? And what I didn't realize at the time was everyone has their own development. You know, so whereas somebody may excel in whatever it may be, freestyling, you know, someone else may be just a better writer, but they have to find that, you know, like you can, like there's some rappers out right now that don't know how to freestyle, right? Like they don't come off the top or anything like that. And that, I mean, I don't know if that really matters in this era. I know in like the 80s and 90s, it really mattered, you know, like it was a thing that it was like a badge of honor, so to speak. So in the earlier stages for me, I just had to figure out, I didn't know this at the time, but I had to figure out my style and what I was going to excel at, right? So one thing that I remember happening was that same friend of mine, Corey was his name, he had a birthday party. And I went to his party and we were doing some freestyling there. And that was the first time I got a good reaction from the crowd. I had written a rhyme, and that was going back to what you said about memorizing. I had written, I want to say 16 lines, so like a 16-bar verse or whatnot. And I memorized it enough for the first couple of lines, because I didn't know about memorization techniques that I know now, but I memorized enough and I said it, and I was using syllables, you know, so I was using various rhyme combinations, and it was the first time I got a good reaction. I was like, okay, this is it, right? I'm kind of getting somewhere with this. So I started to follow that path of rhyming, you know, and I would listen to another guy I didn't mention, was Big L. He was actually murdered. You probably heard of Big L. I'm pretty sure you might have heard about him around the way or whatnot, but he's from Harlem, and he was doing that multi-syllable stuff. You know, he was putting that together earlier on, and that was someone that resonated with me. So I would listen to all his freestyles, all of his songs and everything, and that's how I kept developing. So for me, it was a combination of listening to like the actual rappers who were doing it, picking the brains of the kids that did it in school, and kind of putting that together, you know, and then just seeing what worked for me and what didn't work, and then just experimenting basically.
Yeah, what's an example of multi-syllable? I'm not a rapper, so I don't know that what a multi-syllable is. What is that?
Okay, so basically that's more than one syllable. So if you said spellbound, hell down, hellbound, you know, like things like jail now, like you're focusing on both the syllables. So like, for example, your name, Keys Dan, if my fists don't hit you, my knees can. Like, I'm putting the two words together and I'm rhyming those words, so you're rhyming every syllable in the phrase. So there may be triple syllable rhymes and quadruple syllables, and you rhyme all of those, so it's that goes back to, it's more than just the basic cat, bat, hat, sat rhyme. You're expanding on the words.
Well, that is style, man. Now, speed. We touched a little bit about speed, but I remember Twista and Busta Rhymes. They like to throw a lot of syllables at you, but rapid fire. And then you talk about Jay-Z. He even has a commercial out that says "slow it down," and you kind of slow it down. And Jay-Z was a lot slower and more methodical when he did his rapping. Out of the two, do you feel, do you do both styles where you try to throw a lot of syllables at somebody, or are you mostly, just get the words out and get a story out? Are you a storyteller, or are you more of the syllable?
I pride myself on I can do all. Like, I know that, not to sound too arrogant, but I can do all. It just depends on the record. So like, again, going back to the record with John, like when I work with John as an example, if I had to give you a quick one, if we were in the studio and I said, look, I just want to do some rap stuff. I just want to rap. I want to say some stuff. He would get inspired to do something. We'd start putting something together. And then based on that, whatever the style was, I would go in that direction. So if it was a faster tempo, I would go more in that direction. If it was something slower, I would go with that. I used to be honest with you, I used to have a huge desire to go fast all the time because I just wanted to be good at that. Because like you said, when you talk about guys like Twista and like Busta Rhymes, they're very precise and methodical with those syllables. Some people, like, they try to rap fast, but like, you have to be really methodical because you can only get a certain amount of syllables that are in that flow for that song, and for that line as well. Like, you have to do that. So that's something that you have to really be careful of when you're rapping fast. And then when you're going slow, you kind of run the risk of maybe it being drawn out too much, So like, as an example, Jay-Z, when he does something slower, it's heard, but it's how he inflects his voice. It's how he does the delivery of it that makes it interesting. Because ironically enough, Jay-Z used to rap really fast. Back in like the 80s and stuff, he was really, really fast. And he slowed it down as he got more commercial and different things, because he got that people needed to understand what he was saying, So it just depends on what the type of record is. I mean, nowadays, some people really like that because you don't hear it too much. Like, Busta Rhymes still does it, but he's not releasing music all the time, So if he releases a project like he did a couple weeks ago, people are excited to hear it because it's Busta Rhymes. But, as it goes on right now, a lot of the rappers are doing it slower. That's just the style that people do, right? So I try to balance it out depending on what the record is.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of the styles of the rappers that are going on right now. It's a lot of the same rhythms. It's the same rhythm, and I'm going, man, where's the difference? Where's the people that are really breaking out? And I'm guessing there's some. It's got to be it seems like everything on the radio is now it's that rhythm. Have you found that, or is there stuff that I'm missing because I'm not listening to the same stations?
No. I think you're pretty accurate with that. What it is so like that for us to like discuss that, you got to now get into some of the business of it, right? So basically, that's what's working, I guess, amongst the younger generation, right? Like that, like that style works. So right now, a lot of those record companies, they push that, and that's understandable. And when you have guys that are more, I guess you could say, lyricists, and they're more wordy in their verses and different things like that, it doesn't necessarily always resonate on a commercial level because it's almost as if people like the melody of it. So when they hear the wordiness, they're like, what is this? Like, it's so foreign to them. Whereas there's a pocket of hip hop people that still appreciate that. Like when you said you throw on Eric B and Rakim, I'm sure there are people in that crowd that are like, oh, thank you. I've been waiting to hear this, or they just reminisce because they're like, wow, this is what I grew up on. So a lot of times now what's on the radio, it's more melodic. And I think that's what is the current sound commercial wise, that again, it's a little harder to find on Spotify and the internet and stuff, but it's there, like that lyrical rap and that just people being dope and just rapping and, again, syllables, punchlines, and all that stuff, and being clever with their verses, that's still there, but it's just not dominant in the mainstream, but you're totally right about that, assessment, basically.
Well, I guess that is the problem when the record companies get involved and you got a suit that may or may not be a rapper. Now, I'm guessing when Jay-Z produces people and maybe John produces people, does John play music? Does he have a rap career of his own, or is his forte strictly recording and putting the music, mastering and mixing?
So John's a producer, and for him, what he specializes in that like realm. So for him, he listens to everything. That's one thing I did learn from him, to absorb everything. He was just like, don't limit yourself to, again, just lyrical rap or non-complex rap. Just listen to everything, because at the end of the day, you have to be a fan of music, and that's just what it is, right? So even if it's not my cup of tea, I still try to give it a listen, just to see what's going on, because there are some things that those artists do that you can kind of see and be like, you know what, I'm gonna do this in my own way. I'm gonna incorporate this into what I'm doing and whatnot. And if you come from a great like rap base, basically, if your style is complex and you really know how to rap, that stuff's gonna sound so good when you do it. Like if Biggie Smalls had done some of the new stuff, it would sound so great. Because if you remember the track Notorious Thugs on his Life After Death album, he actually was doing the Bone Thugs flow. He went and he did that, and it sounded so good, and he kind of mimicked it. He did their style in his way, and he was flawless at it. So you can still do that. I just think what people find an issue with is when it's always the same and there's no change. When you see new guys doing that are skillful at rap, it's refreshing because they don't normally do that. So when they throw that in there, it sounds good. But when you see newer guys just doing the same thing, it can get redundant, and that's why I think the shelf life for a lot of like the newer guys that do that, it's not too long. Sometimes guys now are getting a month or so, they're hot for a month and they go away, and you totally forget that they existed, and there's another one that comes out. But there's guys that choose to be skillful, throw that in sometimes, and they last longer, So it's a preference thing at the end of the day for the respective artists.
No, I get it, The-Enemy. And I'm so sorry that you lost your dad at an early age, but you have your mom from Trinidad, and they have a style of music on their own out in the islands.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking of reggae. Reggae, to me, it's kind of like the American blues, where you could turn any song into bluegrass. You could turn any song into a bluegrass song. You could turn any popular song into a reggae song. Yes. I have heard that done. But what kind of music was your mother playing for you? And what other styles of music are really resonating with you beyond rap that you're taking different inspiration from? Besides rap, what are you listening to? And what did your mom turn you on to?
So I think the term, reggae, I do believe reggae is more Jamaican descent, right? I think, but in Trinidad, they have something, it's called soca, right? So soca is, I believe that's the right term. And so earlier on, even like when my dad was alive, I remember him playing Al Green, because I remember hearing the Al Green song, If Loving You Is Wrong. I heard that way later, and I'm like, I remember this from somewhere. And I think my dad would play that. My dad liked, oh my God, it was Marvin Gaye, different things like that. So I think that was always around the household. I think my dad was more into music than my mom was. My mom would hear things, but I don't think my mom was listening in terms of buying records and stuff. Like my dad bought records. Like my dad had a record player. He bought records. He played records. He was actually a mechanic, but he'd have parties at times, and he was playing records and things like that. I think my mom was just listening and absorbing or whatnot. And she would like certain things, but I think my dad was really into buying music and listening to music and whatnot. And then as I grew up, I never like subjected myself to just rap. I liked everything. I listen to pop. I listen to rock. As long as it's good to me and I vibe with it, I'm listening to it. I think that helped me understand various styles and helped me try other things. I think if I just heard hip hop and just stuck to hip hop, I think my music would be bland. I think I wouldn't have a good understanding of other things or whatnot. So I try to, I tell anybody that too, just listen to as much things as possible. I listen to anything. It doesn't matter. I don't have a preference in terms of what I will not listen. I'll listen to anything, for me personally.
Well, The-Enemy, how old are you?
34. 35 on Christmas.
Oh, happy birthday and Christmas. All right. Well, okay. So growing up in the 90s, well,
Yeah, 90s, definitely.
90s, early 2000s, maybe. What year did you graduate high school?
I actually didn't. I withdrew early. I
Okay.
wanted to, for me, I was, like I said, right, I knew what I wanted to do. It is like, I'm doing this music stuff. I went to pursue my stuff early. Like, I
Yes.
was just like, I know what I want to do. And that's kind of how I am. When I have something in my head, I go for it. Like, I wasn't thinking twice about that.
Oh, school of life, man. And it sounds like
Yeah.
you've got an education. And what were those DVDs and those YouTube videos that you were kind of watching and perusing, getting the knowledge from? This way my listeners have an idea of how to follow in the footsteps of the enemy.
So I listened to, or I watched DVDs. There was one, again, the freestyle one. That was, I think you can find that on YouTube. I watched it the other day, actually. So there's one called The Art of MC, Why We Do It. That was part one. Or part one might have been How We Do It. And then Why We Do It was the second one of the two or whatnot. But basically the first one was just kind of going through the culture of hip hop. And the second one was kind of more about the craft, right? Like, from everything. It was about the business, the writing, the freestyling, the recording, and different things like that. I watched a lot of documentaries on the business too, by the way. Like one documentary, it's my favorite one, Welcome to Death Row. That's about the Death Row record label, like, so Tupac, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre. And that is an amazing documentary. I recommend anybody who's just a fan of, again, music, but hip hop as well, so you can understand it. Just how much, like, even Easy was, they did a little bit of talk about him in that documentary, and he was very instrumental in pushing things forward. And then when it got to Death Row and like their animosity and all that stuff, it was just a good way to learn about the music business. So I read books on the music business as well, like, because for me, I find I have joy in being an independent artist because I can do it my way. Like, I can literally be my own boss. I can make my own decisions. Whereas when you're with the label, I think they try to change you in different things. And like, as an example, like me getting on this podcast, I did it by being me, like that. Like, I really appreciate things like that, where I get to, I asked to do interviews and different things by respected people, but I do it by being me. I wasn't trying to be anybody else or anything like that. And that's with these documentaries, I would see that sometimes people were forced into situations that they weren't happy with. Like, you learn that in the business side of it. You'd see certain things where they're doing things and they're like, it's their dream. Like, like, it was their dream to do music, and now they're doing music, but they're not happy and they're miserable. And then the music suffers, So for me, I would just watch these various documentaries on hip hop and all that stuff, even stuff like those VH1 documentaries on TV. I believe I watched the Tony Braxton one, the Britney Spears one, Backstreet Boys. I would watch all that stuff because I could learn and take something from each and every one of them.
Yeah, I was actually going to steer the conversation that way. What other records are you buying? Were you buying Backstreet Boys, or were you
Absolutely,
or what? And what did you get from those different records that gave you insight? Well, what did you get from listening to pop that helped you in the rap world, or did it?
I think. I think, to be honest with you, the quality, it showed me, it let me understand quality to a certain point, because as rap evolved, the quality actually got better. Not that anything was wrong with the quality before. Things were sampled and everything, but if you listen now, there's a lot of the records are really polished, right? So I think as rap became more commercial, I believe that there was, again, the records, the quality of it just sounded more clean, right? So I would notice this in these records. I would listen and be like, wow, these records are like well done, really clean. Whereas you can listen to hip hop records and you can hear certain verses or wherever where maybe the rapper fumbles a word, but I guess that's the authenticity of it, right? Like, that's just, rap has more of a raw feel, But I would hear it on these records where it was very clean, almost too perfect, to be honest with you. Like it's great that there was good quality, but I think it was so perfectly done, timed out. Everything was, there was no off note. Everything was fixed, and sometimes that takes the life out of the music. So I knew where the line was to not cross. I knew not to make things too perfect, but still make it quality. Like, just that was a big thing for me, to make things quality, because again, when people listen to things, you kind of only have 10 seconds, maybe shorter now, 5 seconds now in this era, to get their attention. People have a lower attention span when listening to music, watching movies, or whatever the case may be. So you got to really get them and grasp them the right way. So one thing is, these pop records, they were done by like 15, 20 people. You know, there's 15 or 20 people putting this stuff together and getting all that stuff. So I took that. That's why when I sought out to get a producer and I ran into John, it was great that he focused on quality. He's very meticulous about the quality and just making things sound right. You know, once you have something like that, it doesn't matter if you're a rapper or a singer or whatnot, you can do well on a record when the record just sounds good and you add your flavor to it. It's all great. But when you have, because people hear the beat and the music first, you know, like no one's necessarily hearing an acapella and being like, okay, I want to hear what this is about, right? They hear the beat starts making their head nod and they're like, oh, what's this? And then when you come on with the right chorus or the right verses or whatnot, it's just, it goes together, right? So that was one thing that pop music definitely taught me, just the quality of it.
Oh, definitely the cleanliness. That's the difference between analog of the past and the digital of the now, is you can take those different instruments and put them on separate tracks, each individual instrument, put it on a separate track, put it in your Pro Tools or your Adobe Audition, and have it lined up perfectly. It's not like There's an actual drummer back there going, do, you know, that's making a flub that might hit his snare when he should have hit his hi-hat. You know, it's something, it just stays so clean, 4 and 4, 4 and 4. And yeah, that might take the life out of it. You know, somebody listening to music now and listening to music in the past, but that's what you're growing up with. You have to change, you have to evolve. And you're right about the pop as it grows as well as the rap. It starts to get cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. And does it take the life out of it? Do you feel that? Because I have felt that in the past myself, where it's like, wow, that was just well produced, overproduced, really.
Yeah, like I'll give you an example. I put out a song it was a couple weeks ago called On the Way, right? John produced it and whatnot. And I hear things that obviously nobody else hears, and even if they did, they wouldn't care, right? But I hear little clicks and maybe pops or whatever. So I remember like trying to edit this stuff, and I didn't feel like it was taking the life out of it, but I felt like maybe I'm overworking it. You know what I mean? Like I was sitting back, and I remember my engineer, JD Finer, he puts everything together, right? Because John produces it, and then when JD like mixes it, it's amazing, right? So I've been working with JD for 11 years now, and I remember he'll talk to me about this. He'll be like, dude, like, he's like, you got to keep in mind that none of this stuff is going to affect the record. He's like, if you have a little click or a mouth click or whatever, he's like, that's not hurting the record. He's like, don't lose sight of making a good song because of like these little things that are meticulous, and then you're overworking it, you know? And I think sometimes like I have to step back and say, you know what? I get it. I understand it. And like, even though it irritates me, some things I can't like let go, because I listen to my music a lot more than like the average person. I think I still will bump my own stuff when I'm going for a run or something, or I'm working out or whatever. I'll listen to my own stuff, and I'm always studying it, and I do enjoy it because I can listen to it with the average ear, but I really like to listen to it a lot. So if I hear something I'm not happy with, I gotta fix it for me, because it's like my art, right? Like I'm fixing it for me. I gotta like it first. So that's like always a principle I go with. But I do believe that what could take the life out of it is if when you're recording, you're trying to get that one line, you keep doing it, and then you cut it here and do all this stuff. After a while, you're just listening. You're like, man, I lost the feeling of it, you know? And that's the thing about rap. You got to have the feeling, because it's coming at you so fast anyway. It's more spoken. You got to have that feeling. People, like, if they're not seeing who you are, someone might hear my song and not know who I am, never saw me before. So they got to get a feel from that delivery, right? So I pay attention to that a lot.
Man, D-Enemy, it sounds like you're a perfectionist. You're your own worst critic. You'll keep listening and listening. Oh, I should have done that. But you remember, if you listen to different music, you'll hear breaths. You'll hear somebody go, you know, and give another line, or you'll hear a guitar string as somebody puts their fingers across the string, and wow, that's part of the song. Like I remember that, you know, Queen's my favorite group of all time, and I remember that Brian May, when he was doing that one guitar riff, you hear weep. You know, just you can hear his hand going across the string, but I wait for that. I wait for that piece, those little pieces that are not perfect, and that is the life in your song, in your art, in your creativity. But I think I heard it one time. Art is not finished; it's abandoned. So it's like, you know, when is your song finished? When do you know?
I'm going to take that quote, by the way. I'm going to write that down. I like that. But for me, when I know a record's done, I get a feeling in my gut that I'm like, hey, this is it. Like, this is good. Like, I start, because I can listen to something, and then when I'm listening to it and I'm like, oh, this is good. Like, I'm liking what I'm doing. Like, I'm listening to it as if it's not me, right? And I get that feeling, and I'm like, this is it. Like, I'm rocking with it, and I'm like, okay, we're ready to go, right? It's not hard to get there, to be honest with you. Like, I've done this long enough to where I kind of know what I'm looking for, you know? Like, every record's different, obviously, but I know when I get to that area where I'm like, this is good, this is right, I'm ready to go with it, right? I have a lot of colleagues I do music with, and I find them trying to figure out when it's done, and I try to walk them through that too. I tell them, I'm like, look, you got to get to that point where you know within yourself, you know, you may not be there yet because of experience or whatnot, but for me, since I've been doing it enough, I know what I'm happy with, you know, like, and that's the thing, like, although I'm a perfectionist, I'm not the type of perfectionist that will work on it, and then scrap it. You know, I know what I'm looking for, and it's there. And if I have to come back and attack it again, or if I have to twiddle with it or tweak it or whatnot, I know what I'm looking for. You know, so I never get to the point of where it's just overworking it, and then I get discouraged and then just throw out the song, right? Like, I know what I'm working towards, and I visualize it in my head, so I usually know when it's going to be done and what I'm looking for, so I can get there.
You know what I love, D-Enemy? That you're almost embarrassed that you're a fan of your own work. If you don't like what you do, man, why would you do what you do?
Yeah.
I am glad that you're a fan of your work, man.
Oh yeah, I would definitely. Yeah, of course. No, I just because you know what it is for me. I watch a lot of MMA. You know, I grew up in like the Tyson era, so like you see certain things like that. But with MMA, I'm really invested in MMA. I was more of a kid when I was watching Tyson, so I didn't see the trash talking and the press conferences. But when I watch UFC or whatnot, you see a lot of these guys that they're literally fans of themselves. They believe they're better and all that stuff. And even if it's professional or whatnot, or it's like it might seem not professional to some people, I just think that believing yourself is a big thing. That's something I always try to push for like listeners, anybody that listens to me, because I feel like in anything you do, if you don't have that like hardcore belief in yourself that you're the greatest at it or whatnot, I feel like you're always going to have like a missing point, you know, like it's always going to be like that. And you may not know why things aren't working out for you, but it's because you don't have that belief. You don't see yourself in that light, you know? So I think that's a big thing. Like, even one thing I do a lot in my songs is, whether it's in a line or in the intro or outro, I always try to put like an affirmation in there. So when I'm listening back, that's always like repeating to me. I hear that line, like, you know, I'm the greatest at this or whatever. And like, I hear that play back to me. I even listen to affirmations a lot just to keep my mentality always strong and confident. You know, it's a big thing to me.
Well, I came into MMA later, but I grew up watching boxing, and one of the guys was Muhammad Ali, man.
Yes,
and him
absolutely.
going together with Howard Cosell, their conversations that they had, you could tell they were the best of friends, man. Even though they kind of ribbed on each other a little bit, but you would hear, "Oh, I'm the greatest of all time." So he had confidence, and I love that. And D-Enemy, you know, looking down your social media feed, what is D-Enemy greatest rapper in the world?
For me, that's I'm always gonna feel like I'm the greatest, right? And that's not being disrespectful to anyone, past or present or anything like that. But that's just what I learned from the rappers before me. I remember listening to this interview with Tupac, and it floored me when I heard it. I must have heard it at 16 or something. And I remember he was talking, and he was saying, you know, it was during after the first shooting in '94. And he was obviously, you know, really pissed off and different things like that. And he was just airing out his feelings. And he said, he was talking about various rappers. And he's like, you know, I could destroy them and this and that. And I never understood that till later. I was like, I get it. It was just his confidence. Like, KRS-One felt the same way. Like, when he had his come up and he thought MC Shan was like garbage, in his words, he's like, this guy's garbage. I'm the better rapper. Why are you promoting him? Right. So rap has always been a competitive thing. And I think I've seen rappers who didn't believe in themselves, and I always would be confused as to why, you know, because I think people have this thing where they think, if I believe myself and I say it out loud, I'm being cocky or I'm being arrogant and I shouldn't do that. But it's like, if you don't believe in yourself, like, think about any rapper coming up that no one knows. If they don't think that they're the best, what other person is going to put them on a list, a greatest list, or tell them they're the best? You have to say it first yourself. You know, I think rappers A lot of rappers do believe they're the greatest, but I think there are some that don't. And for me, I don't, like you said, why would you do something if you didn't feel like you were the greatest at it? You know, like I see a lot of that in various things. You know, I see people where maybe it's a self-esteem issue. I didn't always feel like that in the beginning stages, but as I grew, again, I even went back and looked at Muhammad Ali stuff, and I was like, he kept saying that. He got it from I think it was Gorgeous George was his inspiration, right? And he said he would see Gorgeous George, I'm the greatest, I'm the most beautiful, and he's like, I'm taking that, you know. And he started using that, and they thought he was going to lose against Sonny Liston. You know, nobody thought he was going to beat Sonny Liston, and he went in there and he did that because he believed in himself. You know, so I think that's the important thing, to always believe in yourself, no matter what, under any circumstance.
Oh, he floated like a butterfly and stung like a bee, man.
Absolutely.
No,
Absolutely.
and I like the confidence. I like, you know, like I said in the beginning, the first rap that I heard was, I'm the best from the east to the west. So you got to have that confidence and that feeling that you have in yourself. And, you know, braggadocious maybe, you know, possibly, but yeah, you got to feel that you're doing the right thing, and especially if it's getting response. You said that first birthday party, you got people responding to you, and you got the feeling, you got the bug. It bit you, man. As soon as somebody starts responding to your raps and go, yeah, you did a good job, you just want to keep doing it, man. Like, I have a crowd in front of me, and I'm playing a certain kind of music, and the people are out there just having a good time, dancing, loving it. Oh my, it's the best feeling in the world, man.
Absolutely.
So when did you start? I mean, have you? I'm guessing that you've been in front of crowds. When did you start performing live and doing that? And what was your first gigs like? And how many times were you gigging? Tell me about the good gigs in your lifetime.
So I can tell you about so basically, I remember starting early. The funny thing about me is I jumped into that stuff really early, probably before I should have. You know, like I really just went. So I had a lot of flubs on stage before, and I used to get so pissed. And I remember as I developed, and again, the memorization thing, this is where that comes into play. I learned that you really have to rehearse your stuff. You know, like it's common knowledge. You have to rehearse it because you want a natural feel. You don't want it to sound like robotic or nothing, but you have to know what your lyrics and stuff. So once I started taking the time to rehearse and saying, look, I'm going to go over this, practice my set, I got better responses. You know, one of my high points in my career was I remember doing a show in Philadelphia. It was the first time I ever performed in the States. It was a small place, the Voltage Lounge, right? And it was a smaller crowd or whatnot. And I remember there was a lot of artists that night. It was probably 15 to 20 artists with like 3 to 5 minute sets. And I went on maybe at 1 a.m, right? It was me and a friend of mine. And I remember that we went on, and I felt good about it or whatnot. I was pacing backstage. I was really like just in my head affirmations. I was like, you're going to kill this and that, just psyching myself up. And I went on stage, did well. I remember one thing I like to do is when I'm on stage, if I see people in the front, I like to really point them out and be like, yo, shout out to the dude in the front. He got the energy or whatnot. And that would make people feel like they're part of the show. You know, they feel like you reached out to them or whatnot. So that was a high point because it was the first time in the States, but the response after was really good. Like I remember coming off stage and people were just like, you know, giving me dabs, shaking my hand, and they're like, yo, man, amazing. And I felt so good. Like you said earlier, there's no better feeling with any type of performance, you know, like whether you're on a radio show or something and you just do a quick rap or whatever the case may be, the feeling is good. I remember doing one in Toronto where it was at a festival, and again, the feeling, there's no better feeling than when you give a good performance and you're in the zone. That's an important part too, right? Because there's a certain flow state that you get into, you know, where you're just like, this is it. You're just you're firing on all cylinders. You're so focused or whatnot. And when you're done, you get a good ovation, but you know to yourself you did well. You know your practice paid off. You know that you did everything. You let things flow. You didn't get too in your head or whatnot, and you just kept it natural. But you did your thing, and the respect is for me is a big thing. Like just doing a performance and having anybody come up and be like, "Man, that was dope. You're an amazing rapper. Oh my God," that for me means more than anything. You know, if I made $10 million today and I had a shitty performance, it wouldn't even resonate that I made that money because I would have I'd be like, man, I fucked up. You know what I mean? I didn't do a good performance or whatnot. So for me, it's a real important thing. Just again, having a good performance and preparing for that, but being in that moment and capturing that moment is a big thing for me.
Man, you are spot on, I'm glad you started early. I liken it to like a stand-up comedian. When they first start out, they're probably not great. But you've been practicing in the mirror, and you thought that the jokes might land, but they didn't land. And the same as a rap, I guess you've been practicing in your room, practicing in the mirror, getting your facial expressions right, man, getting that rhythm proper. And then when you get out in the crowd, hey, maybe it lands, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you started early, and that's why you're so good right now. Now, you mentioned KRS-One, man. He is the educated rapper, and I remember listening to him growing up, and some of his stuff. If I heard him curse ever, I don't think I ever heard him curse on a rap. I think that was one of the things that he avoided doing. Do you think that limits you, or you feel like just whatever words come and whatever words fit, that's the words you put in there? What do you feel on that?
I think it depends on the person. For me, if I don't really curse in conversation with people, like amongst some friends, if you like throw it out because you're just talking or whatnot or whatever. But for me, like, your art is your art, so it has to come. Like, if it comes from an honest place, like if you're just doing it to do it for no reason, I mean, I don't really advise that. But I mean, if it comes from an honest place, like, you may have a situation, like someone may there could be an artist out there who they're going through a divorce at the time or something, right? And it's really a hard divorce, and it's just like this gets ugly, right? Like, you may say things in a song if you're writing a poem or a piece or music or whatever the case may be. Those words come out, they're part of the English language. I think there's a fine line. Like, I total respect for KRS-One. If he didn't, I don't think I ever heard him curse either, and I think it's amazing. And I think for him too, because what he was trying to present was more education. He was trying to, give people that knowledge. I think it was important that he didn't. I mean, if he did, I don't think it would hurt him, but I think it was good that he kept with that. I think there's other people that they grew up in a harsh environment, like they grew up, like for me growing up, when people, like, no cursing in my household, like my mom never, I don't think I've ever heard my mom curse at all, right? So for me growing up, I didn't really do it. But then when I go into school, and my school was in a little bit of a rougher neighborhood or whatnot, and I would go to that school and people are just using it like no problem. It wouldn't be anything. So I would sit back, and it confused me, because when you go home, you're not speaking like that, but you're hearing it every day. So it kind of becomes part of your conversation with people, and then your friends, they use it. And then again, you're listening to hip hop, right? You're listening to certain people, they're throwing it out there. So you kind of do that. So for me, when I was writing, I'm not gonna lie to you, it never dawned on me that, hey man, I'm cursing too much, or you're using these words. It was more just, here's what I'm saying. I said it in the line. I'm doing this. As I got older, certain things you got to just, because I think we're in a more sensitive society now. So certain things, I'll still say something, but then if it's really messed up, I'll just censor it and blank it out, just for that or whatever, out of respect for any situation that if I may have offended somebody, I might just do that just because I know the era we're in or whatnot. But again, language is language. And like, we see these things in movies, you hear things in movies, there's crazy language in movies, and they become phenomenal pieces of art to people, So I just feel like it depends on the situation. I can see where people have a gripe with music, because I think sometimes especially with hip hop, I think the influence it has on like the younger generation, they really run with it. Like, nobody, when you see The Wolf of Wall Street, for example, a young kid is not necessarily that watches it. They're not going to go and like scam somebody out of money at 17 in that way, like going and getting stocks. They're not even old enough to buy stocks or whatnot at that point. But with music, I think it's just a little bit more influential, and that's why people gravitate towards that and have gripes with that when people are cursing. So it just depends the type of artist.
Yeah, I'm not. I remember before 1980. I mean, before 1990, the rap that I grew up with. I'm class of '86, so nice. That's when I graduated. But and I was playing the music, and I remember none of the raps that I listened to had a lot of if they had one curse word, that was a lot. But 90, it seems like that's when it turned around. With Two Live Crew and with
NWA.
And NWA for sure.
Yeah,
Easy E.
I heard when they came out, that like they said things on songs that no one had said, which is so crazy to think of because like people say stuff like that now and it's like, but when they came out, I could imagine from what you're saying, when you heard the earlier stuff, it wasn't that. So when people were cursing on record for the first time, it must have been mind blowing to everybody listening.
I grew up in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, and when Two Live
Nice.
Crew came to Fort Lauderdale, and the sheriff, Nick Navarro, I remember his name, man. He's not the sheriff there anymore, but he said if Two Live Crew comes here and performs, he had cops all around that arena,
Wow.
waiting
Yeah.
for that first word to come out. And as soon as it came out, boom, down
Show
go the
cancel.
lights. Shut it
Yeah.
down. Believe
That's
me, that
amazing.
crowd was going crazy because they paid their money to see Two Live Crew and he saying, "Hey, we want some," you know, yeah. And you're talking. I'm not a prude by any means. I
No, of
used to
course, yeah,
curse
yeah.
when I was a kid, and I guess when I was a firefighter way back when. But as soon as
Yes.
I got on the radio, I stopped. I just stopped. I
Okay.
haven't had the need for it, and
Okay.
I don't think I've cursed in a while. But does it limit me? Now my brother curses like a sailor because he was a sailor, you know,
Nice.
and he raises his kids to where they'll hear that in the house. But my kid has never heard it. I don't know. Is it better? Is it worse? Is it different? It's just words. I mean, the words got power. But
absolutely.
since you're a person that works with words, they're words that can be used, right? And you were saying if you have a harsh thing in your mind, going through a divorce, a death, a suicide, somebody close to you died, you're going to have those feelings, and sometimes those are the words you need to express those feelings. I mean, how do you? Is any of this resonating with you at all, Enemy?
Well, see, the thing is, again, like I think I would never limit somebody like this. If I was in a studio session and I heard somebody say the craziest shit, it wouldn't offend me because I always try to respect people's perspectives first. So like you just don't know the background somebody comes from. Some people come from really messed up upbringings. Like they come from like they're they got beat like really brutally as a kid, but then their parents are saying this, they're talking like that to each other. So I get it. You may come from something, right? So I'm not upset towards it in any way, shape, or form. I mean, when I have kids, I wouldn't be cursing around them, but I would explain it to them. I would explain to them, like, when you hear these words, this is this is a possibility of why this may come out of this person's mouth. They might be from this background. There's various things. When you grow up and you use these, you just have to understand when and where, right? Like, again, amongst your friends, you're kicking back or whatnot, things come out. Like, my friends, if they say something, I'm not like, what are you doing or whatnot. We're just talking like that. It's all good. But around maybe in a public setting, with some people you're not familiar with and you're going to like maybe a birthday party with more people that you're not familiar with, right? You're not going to really throw those words out or whatnot, just because out of respect. For me, it's more out of respect thing. Even when it comes to my music, when people ask me, they say, or do you? They don't actually know. They don't ask me, but I give them I give them the warning, the pre-warning. I'm like, hey man, it's a little vulgar, just to let you know, right? Just because out of respect, I'm like, look, this is what it is. It may not be it may not be the music you listen to on a regular basis, but if you want to support me, here's a heads up. This is what I'm about. This is it or whatnot. But I don't think what I'm saying is anything that is so crazy that you haven't heard before. Like, again, we use these words, you hear them in movies. It's just what it is. I mean, in everyday conversation, I'm not going to be throwing those words around every day, but they come out here and there or whatnot, So again, I think it depends on the situation, the person, and the upbringing,
Yeah, something I've never said on the podcast before. Is that a code switch? When you're talking with your boys, that's one thing. But then when you go home, you talk with your mom, that's a whole nother thing. Is that a code switch? Is that you're talking a little more proper, I guess? Or is that what a code switch is?
I think, what it is? I think it's more just a comfortable thing, right? I think some people, when the relationship you have with others, I think if you have a certain relationship with your mom or your dad, right? You may have grown up. I have friends that grew up where I've spoken to their parents and they're like, in our house, we don't do that. we would tell our kids, so they would tell my friends, if you do it outside with your friends, cool. The minute you step into here, don't do that, you know? So I think it's just more when you're amongst certain friends that maybe you grew up with and you guys are so comfortable, you're throwing things out, whatever the case may be. But when you come home, I think it's just how you were brought up. Now, on the flip side, if your parents used it, you're going to use it around them. You're not going to feel that line, you know? But some parents enforce that line. They say, look, in our household, absolutely not, you know? Like, it just depends.
Well, I rebelled against my mom. She cursed like a sailor too. No, but and you had that. So growing up, man, and you said you weren't going to raise your kids the same way, but you heard it on the streets. Were you able to go home and you say, "Mom, I heard this crazy word. What does it mean?" Were you able to ask your mom?
No, I don't think. I think me and my mom started talking about that stuff later because I even know. I start to realize as I got older, I start to realize that my mom, her upbringing was very like they say similar thing where they didn't use those words right in their household. So I start to realize that she, I think, was like kept away from a lot of that stuff. Like her parents like deliberately kept her away from that. So if she were to even hear it, even if she hears it so much in like a show or something, she may be taken back by it, right? So I think I knew that people use these words and I heard it so much and I started to like at an early age realize, you know what, these words are used. I know why I'm not using it at home per se. I don't really need a definition of why people, it never confused me or anything like that. I did think that some people were like way overboard. Like every sentence was, you know, I think that goes back to your point. If every sentence is that, it kind of turns people off in terms of conversation, you know? Again, there are people that do it, that people don't care. I'm not going to say that it turns me off personally, but there are some people, there's pockets of people that they don't want to hear that every second. They get turned off and they want to go the other way, right? So it really depends. But for me personally, I never felt that I needed any kind of, again, definition of it. I knew what it was. Again, listening to hip hop early too. Like I remember when I actually was listening earlier on, like Eminem was one of them. He cursed a lot, right? And I remember my mom not knowing. This goes to show you she's like wasn't aware of this stuff. I asked her to buy me the CD. She got me the CD, and she heard it, and she was like, "What's that? Like, what are you listening to?" You know, she was taken back by that. She's like, "What's going on here?" or whatnot. But for me, again, I was like, "Mom, it's just music. Like, it's rap music." You know, like I understood it then because when I was introduced to it, people were throwing those words around anyway. You know, so I figured, okay, they're just saying it in songs. I mean, you would hear it slip out in interviews and stuff, but again, a lot of this stuff was art, you know, like a lot of this stuff was how they expressed themselves. People coming from bad areas or whatever the case may be, they hear it so much that they throw it in their songs. But then as they navigate through the industry, I mean, they're not going to be saying that to executives and stuff like that. They're not going to be saying that to if they're talking to fans and having a heartfelt conversation, you know. So I guess it's just where you place it.
Yeah, it's as long as there's substance thrown in between whatever words you're using. There's substance. There's a message. There's a lyrics that you know a lyrical story that you're trying to tell. You're the folk singers of today. You know, because folk singers used to tell a story in their song, but a great rapper can tell a story about, you know, hey, this thing happened to me, and I'm gonna lay it down bar by bar, man. And
Absolutely.
just really get that story out there. I mean, like I said, I'm no prude, man. All my favorite movies are rated R, action movies, man. Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, Yippee-Ki-Yay, you know, definitely. You know what that means. Yeah. If somebody says Yippee-Ki-Yay, you're already thinking the next word in your head.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, man, I just... and what do you think of the warning label that somebody decided to stick on an album just because it has certain words? I mean, I liken it to the cancer label on the side of a cigarette pack. Is it going to stop you from buying that record? Is it going to stop you from buying those cigarettes if you need them? You know, what do you think of those warning labels?
I think, to be honest with you, again, growing up, I was listening to explicit songs, even though there were versions that were clean, right? I never asked my mom, hey, by the way, get the clean version. I was like, okay, God, can you give me this CD? And like my mom just went and grabbed it, and her going to grab a CD for me, they're thinking maybe she's a fan of this music. So no one's asking any of those questions. And even for me, when I see those warning labels, I think it's good because it lets the person know what they're getting, right? At that point, if you're a parent and you go with your kid and your kid asks for that CD, as the parent, you have to know whether you want to buy that CD, one, and two, if you're going to explain why that the warning label is there and what this language means. Now, if you buy the CD and you just give your kid and there's no explanation, your kid starts saying that and you have a problem with it, there was a misstep, in my opinion. You know, like, again, I'm not telling anyone how to parent, but I feel like there was a misstep because even though a parental advisory sticker is there, a kid that's 15, 16, they may know the gist of it. Oh, this cursing, okay, but they don't know the deeper reasoning as to, you know, this is art. Some people have a harsh situation that they're coming from, that they're expressing themselves, and they put it on there to let you know. So, because if a young kid goes and gets a CD and there's no label and hears all this, I mean, I could see the backlash, you know, that could come from that, because it's like, hey man, like, you do it on movies, they do it on video games, you know, they put that label that there's nudity or there's cursing or whatever the case may be. So I think it's necessary to let you know what you're getting into. You know, I think that's fair enough. I don't think that, apart from that, I don't think that rappers have to apologize for the lyrics and different things. I mean, if you're saying something that's totally crazy or whatnot, I do understand why apologies are issued, but in terms of just cursing, I don't feel like a rapper needs to, or any musician for that matter, needs to apologize for that, right? That warning label's on there, you know that it's 18 and over. At that point, the parent has to make a decision if they want to buy that, and if they want to buy it, they should be mindful enough to explain to their kids, you know, like, hey, this is what this CD entails, and this is what's going on here.
You know what's funny is at this club that I go to, that I DJ at on Friday nights, the Rab in Conway, Arkansas, and I grew up in Miami, by the way, in South Florida, so I'm kind of a fish out of water when I moved here as well, but you know, different places. But I go there, and a lot of the people are 40 and above. And, you know, they want to listen to some country music or some rock music or maybe some 80s pop music or something like that. And every once in a while, there'll be a group of young people, because it is a college town, Conway, Arkansas, and there'll be some 20-somethings that come in. So I'll switch the music up. Usually it's around 11 o'clock, maybe closer to midnight when they come in. And I'll say, hey, to all the 40-somethings that are still here, this is what your kids are listening to in their headphones that you may or may not know what they're listening to. And bam, here comes, you know, I'll play some of the new jams, some of the new stuff, and, you know, from the 2010s and beyond, you know. But you know, and they'll go, man, and they got great beats. But some of the lyrics, the people will be off put by this. Who is this playing? Oh, that's you know, that's Pharrell, and that's you know, that's Future, and that's you know, those are, you know, whoever's I'm playing, and they'll go, who is that, man? Because that is a solid beat, and he's got, you know, good lyrics. And hey, who knows? Maybe I'll play a D-Enemy coming up real soon in the next show, and they'll go, who is that? I love breaking out new artists, man. That's one thing is when I have all these artists that come in on this podcast, a lot of them will send me music, and I'll put it on radiowhat.com sitting here behind me. And I noticed that you have a song, D-Enemy on the Way. That's the latest track. I mean, let's go into your music. I know I'm kind of rambling a little bit.
No, it's all good.
No, I kind of think about, you know, the music that I'm playing for people, but what is the music that you've been playing? When did you start laying stuff down, and were you recording it in your bedroom at first, or when did you start putting your tracks onto a medium that can be recorded and listened to? And you know, were you doing? Do you do vinyl? No, tapes, mixtapes, CDs.
So the first actually, funny enough, the first CD or song I recorded was I want to say 2002. First time I ever went to a studio, and I actually got it. I don't have the tape anymore, unfortunately, but I actually had it recorded to CD, but I had the guy make me a tape version just because I came from that. Like, CDs, songs in the beginning stages of music, I think I was getting tapes, because tapes were still a thing, I believe, definitely in the 90s.
Definitely in the 90s.
So I would still have tapes. So I just kind of was like, oh man, my first song, I want to have this on tape, and then CDs or whatnot. So the funny thing is, interestingly enough, I feel like I went through a lot of the eras in terms of the format. So I didn't go through vinyl. I never had something put to vinyl, but definitely one thing on tape, CDs for a couple of years. And then I started to segue. I've always been good on the internet, so I started to segue onto those platforms, and it was a smooth transition onto those platforms that you can get your music on. And I find that now, again, I recorded. I started in the studio, and then had my own studio built. I bedroom, and then I had one in a small building or whatnot. So I record that way. But then in terms of distributing or whatnot, obviously everything's online now. I don't know. I've done CDs. I want to say now the last time I mean, I'd say in 2007, 2008. That was the last time I had something of mine produced on CD. But I had gotten on mixtapes, and those were on CDs. I think the last one would have been 2011. Because I would just get a song on a mixtape, a DJ would put out his CDs or whatnot, and then that's what it was. But in terms of that, like, I think your core fans, there would be core fans that would still get an artist CD. If they put out like a limited amount, I do think they'll go to get it, but I don't think that'll work for every artist, because a lot of artists came up in the digital era, and that was the first time you heard them. So like, their fans don't even understand CDs, let alone like tape or vinyl, So like, somebody like Rakim could put out a vinyl right now, and I believe there are fans that would go get it. They're like, oh man, I'm getting that. I grew up on him. I believe Redman could put out vinyl. I don't think someone like Lil Uzi Vert can do vinyl, but again, maybe he can. I just don't think his fans grew up on that, so they wouldn't do that. For me, I liked CDs because it was a physical thing that somebody can hold. I enjoyed the process of making a CD. Like, for people that don't know, it's more than just putting it, like stamping it. You get your cover done. You have a chance to be artistic on the cover, the back cover. Whereas now it's just, you put that one cover on there, you upload it, and then that's your stuff, So I like that. I like the digital thing, though, because you can get out to people, and people can kind of like pick what they want, so to speak, And I think it's easier on artists in the sense of, you don't have to go and make a full album right away. You can kind of hit them with singles for a little bit, which is what I do. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do it now, because everything is just so all over the place,
Well, yeah, it's easy enough for an independent artist to put their music out. And funny enough, I gave up my techniques back in '99, and I think I have 2 records, and one of them belongs to Billy Craone. I have it up there on the wall behind me, and then I have a couple of CDs. There's Paulie Lane and Bree Ogden.
Nice.
And do I play them on my CD player? No, I rip them, put them on my hard drive. I gave up my techniques, my turntables back in '99. When I'm DJing, I'll DJ off the computer, and I'll use some Pioneer controllers, which emulate, I could do the mixing and scratching, using the controllers. So it's like, but I'm slowly filling up my wall, trying to put some of the artists up here that I've been having on the podcast and such, and making sure that I promote them from time to time. There's Red Iris amazing back there, and it's how you keep it going, man, and that's what we need to be doing, is helping each other. Well, I mean, you've been putting out music on your own. Have you ever been approached by a record label, and they'll say, hey, I can move 1 million units, and you get $100,000 worth of it? Or you can move your own 100,000 units, and you keep $100,000 of it. So, I mean, the advantage and disadvantage to, of having a record label, it seems like they can move more units, but you're still going to get the same amount, more or less, as if you were doing it on your own. I think the record companies are running scared. Have you ever had anybody or come to you and say, sign on the dotted line, I'll make you a star, D-Enemy?
I had so the first time in Philadelphia, actually, when I did that show right after, the person who helped me, the promoter who helped me get on that bill, he said that someone was interested, that they were an A&R at Universal. The conversation didn't go anywhere, though, because I just wasn't interested in anything like that. So I did tell him, I'm like, I appreciate the offer. I just want to do it on my own. I'm not like interested in signing. I had a few people get at me online, even to this day, and for me, once I learned the business, I really said to myself, I don't need that. Like, I'm the guy that's cool with doing it smaller and keeping more of my finances and being in control, because the thing is, I get the glamour of it, but you look at it and you say, like, again, me being on your podcast, I said to myself, I'm like, I didn't need a label to do that. That was hey, I respect your talent. I want to have you on here. Made the connection, and we were doing the interview. For me, that trumps what these labels will say. They'll say, oh, well, I can get you on this show, right? But again, I'd rather do it on my own, and you can do that now with the internet. Now, 20 years ago, not so much, right? I might have wanted to try to get a record deal, and I might have done something in terms of stylistically, my music. I might have changed to fit that mold so I could like impress them, whereas the internet made it, you can do whatever the hell you want. You can have your own photos the way you want. You can build your brand the way you want. You don't have to get a face tattoo if you don't want to. You can do whatever you want, and that for me was important. Like the money of it, again, like I never went and said, I need to make money, let me start rapping. For me, it started from the passion and just looking and saying, wow, this is amazing. I can express myself. And there's so many aspects and intricacies to this hip hop culture that it's just interesting to me. And I love this shit. So like for me, I don't need a record label in that respect. Now, if a record label and me like approached me and say, for instance, was really interested in maybe I took a conversation, I still, for me, it would be, I would want maybe a distribution deal. But even then, you look at it and I have distribution because I'm getting my stuff out and I'm on all the online stores. So you have to say to yourself, the only thing they can offer you is more reach. But for that reach, what are they taking? I'm not going to let anybody take my masters. I'm not going to sign over the rights to my music and everything. And at the moment, I do everything on my own. I have it basically in-house. So it's like I don't have that whole desire to say, oh, I want to be under your umbrella. I need your producers, like even though it's a longer span and it'll take you years, I'd rather have that and be happy and not miserable. I can wake up in the morning and say, wow, I did this. Like even waking up today and just saying, okay, I have this podcast interview. Even months ago, like when we booked it, I was like, wow, this is amazing. I have this interview. This is crazy. I'm excited to do this next, and then whatever the next song is or the next, when quarantine's done, I can travel again and different things. That's interesting to me, and that stuff is fun to me, rather than doing it under this like conglomerate that's going to tell you what to do. Like I just don't, for art, I don't feel like artists should be told what to do.
No, the enemy. I completely agree with you, and like I said, the record companies are running scared. It's nice that you can do it all on your own. I'm hoping that you're getting a good response from some of the records that you're putting out. And the one thing I do miss about physical CDs, or actually physical albums, is the artwork. And I noticed that on your social media, D-Enemy on the way, it's got you with your phone there. That's a great image, just it gives the people an idea of who you are, and I'm glad that you got the business side under your belt, because I've talked to some artists that have really been given the runaround by record companies, where the first year they'll have representation, oh, here, I got $5,000 for you, hypothetical, I got $5,000 for you, sign on the dotted line. But they always say, you're going to pay that $5,000 back one way or the other.
Exactly.
You're not going to make anything until they start making money, and then it'll start trickling down to you. Yeah. And that's not the way it should be. You should be making the money first and trickling it down to them for helping you out. But I mean, I'm hoping that, I'm guessing you have all your music on Spotify and Apple, iTunes,
it's everywhere. Spotify, Apple, Tidal, iTunes. I have it again. Who I'm distributed with, New Wave Distro. They're a great company. They offer promotion as well when I release records and whatnot. So right there, I mean, I have my level of promotion that I need, and it's everywhere that it can be. If you type my name in, you're gonna see it. So all those factors is why I say to myself, like, what could a label really do for me? Like, I don't need them, So I look at it and I say, again, they're going to give you a loan, right? They're going to give you, because to be fair, like if I take myself out of D-Enemy for a second and I say, okay, ego aside, right? They're a business. They come to an artist, they say, we're going to invest this in you. Now I get it. A lot of artists may, again, come from a situation where they need that money desperately. So if they say, hey, here's $100,000, that artist is not thinking, I'm going to owe that back. They're just thinking, oh, I got an opportunity. I'm getting money for my talent. Then they may not even get a lawyer, and they may not look at those type of things on their contract. 6-7 months down the line, record's released. they are doing well. And then their first check, it happened to Toni Braxton. Her check was like $1,900, and she had the biggest single at the time for a female artist. That's like ridiculous, right? But she didn't realize all those award shows, the attire, the video shoots, all that stuff, they put a lot of money into her. So she had to get it back. She didn't know that, and now with the internet, you have enough information to see that and say, okay, if I go with the label, here's what is coming to me. Here's what here's what I'm going to be dealing with. If I go independent, here's what I'm dealing with. So it's kind of like you got to pick what headache you want, so to speak, right? Now, I don't look at it as a headache. I love all the aspects outside of the music as well. I like marketing it. I like learning about the business and all that stuff, right? That stuff is amazing to me. So I don't have the issue where I'm like, oh man, I need a label to take this over. Some artists, though, to be fair, some artists just want to be creative. They don't care about going and marketing. They don't want to do interviews. They don't want to do anything like that. They just want to be in the studio and make music. But that comes with a price, right? If you're in the studio, someone else is behind the scenes making this money and putting things around. And then when you go to look at your bank account or your check and it's low, you're wondering why. And that's where that friction happens, So it's about just, again, educating yourself, understanding what the business is and all that type of stuff, to just know, like, if you want to do a label deal, cool, just go into it understanding, like you said, the money's going to trickle down and the artist always gets paid last. That's a fact. So if you understand that and you want to deal with it and you're okay with that and you're like, well, I'm famous and that's what you want, it's all good, But if you're patient and you're like, look, I'll just do this the long grassroots way and I'm okay with that and I'm happy in the end, then that's all that matters.
Oh yeah, the more people involved, you got to realize those people got to get paid. And they're going to get paid first, no matter what, especially if you've signed it on the dotted line. But DNMeOfficial.com is your website. Who designed that website? Yeah. It's so cut and dry and so perfect, well made. Who designed that website?
So I have a friend, actually, it's a childhood friend of mine. We grew up together. He's a web designer, Julian Rotundo. I don't think he'll mind that I said his whole name because he has a web design business. He has his own business doing web design and whatnot. He's also an artist as well. So when we reconnected a couple years ago, he was working on a project for his music and I was helping him out with the recording and everything. And he asked, he's like, hey man, I can help you revamp your website, right? And I didn't know anything. I had a website at that point, but I didn't know the logistics of it and different things. And he's like, yeah, you could probably do this and have this here and have everybody come here for this stuff and have your Spotify link to it and all that. So we worked on it, and then it was a work in progress over the years, and we always try to keep tabs on it to update it and different things like that. But for me, it was just me and him sitting down, collaborating and saying, hey, look, I want this. I want it to represent this. If you look at a lot of my visuals, it'll represent me as a rapper. That's just what I want to push, right? So a lot of it, there's not going to be any like gimmicks and different things like that. It's just me in like the environment of rapping, and that's something I've always wanted to push. So he took that and we put it together and different things. And then, we're revamping it. We're working on the merchandise. Like I'm doing a lot of the testing with it right now, just to see the navigation with the merchandise to make sure, because that's another thing too. When I start putting out the merchandise, I want to make sure when people get it, it's like good and nothing gets lost. And, dealing with the whole COVID thing right now, I just didn't want to risk having anything out and then things being delayed and people are paying. Like I'm really conscious and serious about that. When I have fans that want something like that and they pay their money, I don't want anyone to get stiffed or anything, because a lot of that happens on the internet too in various instances. So I want to make sure that everything is tight before I start putting the merchandise for sure. But it shows up right now, but you can't purchase anything yet.
Oh, okay. All right. I mean, I'm noticing the website, it's perfect. It's simple and easy to navigate, and it says what it needs to say. Your social media is right there in the upper right. It makes it so easy to find you, DNME. I appreciate talking to you so much, man. I
appreciate it too.
I'm having a good conversation. Any other avenues you want to explore? I mean, what's going on in the future of DNME? I mean, I know this is not going to be the last time. I don't want this to be the last time that we talk. I want to catch up with you as time progresses, and I want this to be the start of a beautiful business relationship.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
I've enjoyed talking to you, man. I'm picking your brain, and I'm getting knowledge. The KRS-One,
Likewise.
Look out! Here comes DNME, man. To the new educated rapper, the greatest rapper of all time. He's even got the T-shirt, man. you could see it on his website on the About page. He's wearing it. The best rapper of all time. I love it, man.
Definitely.
I love that you have that.
Always about the confidence, man. Always about the confidence.
I love it. Any other avenues you want to explore that you haven't talked about?
Um, to be honest with you, like I said, I'm always 100% about my music. That's like I'm one track mind with stuff. But in terms of future stuff, like I've said this today, like to a couple people, like I want to definitely change the way uh, certain things happen with contracts in the music business. Like I know that's a long time and that'll take a while for things like that to happen. But I really want to change that, and I want to like push the narrative of like artists really understanding one what they're signing, but also understanding the overall industry and like the perception and different things. Because one thing I've noticed over the last couple of years, and it's kind of like been something that I've just realized, was I think a lot of artists, when they see certain artists, on TV or whatever the case may be, or just having a bigger platform, I think they assume that maybe the artist is better than them or the artist is good. That's why they're there, right? And what they don't realize is a lot of strings being pulled behind the scenes. This stuff, I always say the music business, like especially like the rap industry, it is very similar to professional wrestling. There's a lot of stuff that is controlled. There's a lot of things, the outcome is controlled. Like there's a lot of that. And I think a lot of artists can be like very heartbroken if they see that something's not going their way and they did the exact same thing as was told by a bigger artist, and they don't realize that there's someone behind the scenes that is pushing certain things. Like when I couldn't, as an example, if I signed to a record label, if I signed to a label with another rapper who is just as renowned, or they looked at as renowned, and he had the greatest rapper thing, they may not push that narrative in my story, or they might not push that narrative for me because they're like, well, that's clashing with our artist that was making money for 20 years and now you're a newer guy that we're investing in. We can't do that. So right away, that takes away my stuff and they're going to put something else on it. When my vision is, look, I look at myself as the best. Why can't that be a thing? Rap is competitive. But again, you're in a controlled environment. And that's one of those reasons with the label. They tell you what they want you to look like. They tell you what the narrative should be. They build the story. Whereas me, I can come on, again, podcasts like yourself and say, look, I'm about this. This is me. This is who I am, and that's always been a thing. Even I did, it was last year, I did an interview on, it was a New York radio station. And I said the same thing. I said, I feel like I'm the best, right? And it was so surprising to me because the radio DJ, he was like, I've interviewed a lot of rappers and I don't feel like they are being genuine when they say that. And I was like, really? It was so surprising because New York is the birthplace of hip hop.
Yeah.
So when I heard that, I was so shocked and I thought to myself, you're joking right now. And then he's like, no. And then when I, he heard more about me and whatnot, he was like surprised that I think coming from Toronto too has something to do with it because they don't see too many of that. So I look at it and I say, again, that whole narrative of what the perception is in the music business, it can make an artist feel like they're not good enough. And I've always pushed back towards that. So again, just trying to like educate artists. I don't know. I can't say that would be like an institute or something, but I know the more I'm on platforms, I always want to push that, like confidence and just understanding, again, the industry you're in and why certain things happen and why certain things don't. And I think if you do that, you'll be happy knowing like, okay, I'm doing it my way. It's all good. This didn't happen because of this. It's totally fine. I can accept that because I'm not in control of that. But a lot of artists, I think, try to focus on what they can't control, and it screws their head up to where they get upset with the industry and they don't even want to do music no more when this was their dream initially.
I'm appreciating your eloquence, D'Enemy. Man, you got knowledge, you got skills. I was listening to your music a little earlier, and it's good, man.
Thank you. And
why not be confident enough to wear a shirt that says the greatest rapper of all time and have your name underneath. And D'Enemy, I think you branded yourself pretty well on your own. If you look up D'_NME, if you Google it, you're going to find you, man. You're going to find all your social media. Definitely. You're going to find your official webpage. And is that the only way you want people to contact you? And what kind of project are you open to if somebody wants to collaborate with you? What are you open to?
At the moment, I'm working on a EP, so I'm probably going to try and put that out next year just because the whole the quarantine thing, again, I wasn't discouraged in any way. I had more time to just practice on my craft and work on stuff, so it wasn't that. But just traveling, I would have to go out there and work on other stuff. But when people contact me, Instagram is good because that's my you can just click email. It goes right to contact at thenenemyofficial.com. So you can get at me through my website and different things. And honestly, it just depends. Like, if, again, with collaborations, it really depends, because right now we're in a state where you can send something to somebody, they can send it back, but you're not like physically in the studio,
Right.
which I go to the studio with John, and it like that kinship's there. You can say, like that music relationship has been built. So when someone's like, "Oh, hey, let's just work on something," it's like just throwing it together. It might not be as quality driven as it could be. If we would kind of figure it out, how can we do this and make this just a bigger project? For me, I'm always about just doing things in a not necessarily a right way, because right is different for everybody else, but just in a professional way. Being professional about how we do stuff. Like, I don't want to just rap on something. I send you the verse, it mixes, and it's put together, and things are sounding weird, and we sound like we're in two different places. If we're gonna collaborate, I'd want to do it the right way, and what's right to me.
Oh, the enemy. You got it. You've hit the nail on the head. There's some things that you need to be in the same room to work
Absolutely.
on, and you do have that camaraderie with your producer, and I'm glad you have a John. Everyone needs a John, man. Everybody needs somebody that you could bounce ideas off of. I'm sure you show up with your notebook and you go, "Hey, how about this?" And then you'll say,
Mhm.
"Hey, how about we just twist it around this way?" And
Yeah.
you have to come to an agreement, and it. Hey, sometimes a producer, if they've been doing it long enough, they know what sounds right. They know what's going to
Mhm.
sound better, and
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
nice. Like the editor on a movie film. Those are
Mhm.
usually the guys that put it all together and
Yeah,
get it
for sure.
cut just right. Even though the director says, "Oh, but I like that part." Yeah, you need to cut that out of there. You need to get
Yeah,
that right out of there, and that's what a producer will do for you. Is he'll
for sure.
trim all the fat, and get just that solid performance level up, man.
Exactly. Just gets what needs to be there.
Ah, excellent, man. The enemy. I'm glad to know you, man. It's good to talk to you finally.
Likewise. Thank you
Um,
for having me. I appreciate it.
oh, for sure. And
I was
as we
looking
wind
forward
this
to it.
thing down, I usually finish it off with last words for the people.
Mhm.
Um, the enemy, it could be, words to live by,
Mhm.
words that you heard a long time ago, or something that, a mantra that you may or may not have put into a rap by now, or
Mhm.
just whatever pops into your head at this moment in time. The enemy, last words for the people.
Okay, something that actually sticks out to me is the toes you step on the way to the top are attached to the asses you have to kiss on the way down. So you got to be right with people, and you got to just be respectful and professional with people, and always look at yourself as the best in whatever you do.
Well, there you have it, party people. The enemy. Oh, that's a good dude, man. I enjoyed talking to him. And he has learned a lot about his craft. He's not only a great rapper, but he's also a good businessman as well. He learned that all on his own, pretty much all on his own. Yes, he's had a few mentors that he was able to pick their brains as he was growing up, but my goodness, it's good to talk to this young man out of Toronto, Canada. Oh man, I see nothing but great things happening for you. So look for him, D Enemy, D apostrophe NME. Look for him. It's dnmeofficial.com. That's his website. And you can find all the social media right there. And it'll show you the website. There's a place to get the merchandise. I know that as of the time that we're recording this, it's not quite out there, but he has some T-shirts and some hoodies available, hopefully real soon. There's some press, there's an about page, and there's a page to contact him. So give him a follow, man, and find out more. And take a listen on Spotify and Apple and all those other places that you find music. Those are the two that come to mind. Those seem to be the two biggest ones. I know you mentioned a few other ones, but yeah, man, good to know you, D Enemy. That's a it's kind of it's so funny that the name the enemy, it's so ironic because he seems like a good person, a good friend. So it's completely ironic. Seems like he's a good dude. Nice to know you, the enemy. All right, that's it for this edition of What Makes You Famous. If you'd like to tell your story, yes, you, my loyal listener, if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to give me a call, 501-470-6386, or email info@radiowhat.com. That's it for me. It's Keys Dan, radiowhat.com, djlittlerock.com. Peace. I'm out of here.